Hello and welcome to another episode of the American Soccer Analysis Show. I am your host, Kieran. On election night, what'll be more unhinged, the takes or the votes, I am joined by uh, the men from, I have no idea how Colorado votes. So, Ben, I don't even know what color to call you, but I'm pretty sure Washington is fairly Dem. But I'm joined by Harrison and Ben. Gentlemen, how are you handling the stress of an election?
My wife's been texting me updates through Discord over the last like 20 minutes while we've been talking. And I'm really not like I just keep sending her like gifts back specifically of like David from Schitt's Creek, just like
Nice.
swearing and breathing.
So to
I
give
feel
you
like that's the
guys
most appropriate.
a reference for my locale, I'm in Nevada, which is obviously an important state. So I have this to get me through the podcast.
Listeners, this is Kirkland's signature tequila reposado.
Absolutely.
That is a are you mixing it at all or are you just drinking?
Of course, with diet Pepsi.
Reposado, you can go either way, right? Like añejo, yeah, absolutely,
Yeah,
it's
but
straight, and
not with
blanco, absolutely,
Costco.
it's mixed. No, Costco buys for like, all right,
I think I paid $17 for that bottle, which is not bad.
It's a good deal.
it's a solid bottle. It's a solid bottle. I will give you that.
Ben, how you doing?
Oh, we're doing fine.
You're
Colorado.
doing fine.
Colorado's pretty blue these days, by the way.
Oh, nice. All right, good to know. Uh, well, I'm trying to think of a blue segue here, but none of the series are particularly blue. And the only one that would be blue, the Whitecaps, is going to 3 games. We are two-thirds of the way through the round of best of three, which is mixed reception, but I think has been quite good so far. In that the series that are over quickly, and the ones we want more of are there. Orlando, Charlotte, we're going to talk so much about that one later. FC Cincinnati, New York City FC is going to game three. LAFC Whitecaps is going to game three. And Inter Miami, Atlanta, one that we did not think was going to be a three-gamer, also going to game three. The four series that are done early, of course, the Galaxy smashed the Rapids 9-1 on aggregate across the two legs. Seattle downed Houston Dynamo without winning a match, uh, which is always fun. Minnesota and their pesky anonymous soccer analysts defeated RSL, and the final 2-0, and we pegged as would be the best series. New York Red
hmm
Bulls, Harrison picking, having the chutzpah. New York Red Bulls downing Columbus Crew in two. Let's start there because I think that's the most interesting series to talk about. Matt Doyle said, and
Okay.
this is true, that based on point difference, so there was a 19-point difference between Columbus and the Red Bulls in the New York in the regular season. We talked about how similar these teams were on the underlying metrics, expected goal difference, G plus difference, all that sort of stuff we talked about last week or 2 weeks ago. But based on point differential, it is the biggest upset in MLS history. It does not feel that way. Those games were dead even across both games. Super, super fun. Amazing games to watch from like a drama and intrigue perspective. And after those 2 games, by the way, across those 2 games, collective expected goal difference, 0.2 in favor of Columbus. Dead even.
Can we just say that that's because like they have to cover themselves, like they have to in some way support their Columbus Crew narrative?
What is their
No, no.
Columbus Crew narrative?
I jest because we've equally, I feel rightfully have talked and sang praises of Wilford Nancy and Columbus Crew. They've been very good this season. And the joke is that Columbus Crew in general has just kind of been, they've been, undeservedly so, just been a storied franchise the from Matt Doyle and from Andrew Wiebe and from all of MLS. They've been gushing about them.
The best team of all time. Some are saying should probably get out
Some
of
are
the first.
saying, and I don't think
Probably
that's
get out of the first
crazy.
round. Should probably get out of the first round.
Yeah, but I don't think that's crazy. They've been like we've talked about it, right? Columbus is a very good team. every like it's funny because didn't you guys both vote for Wilford Nancy? Is that what we?
Oh
Is
yeah,
that what?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure.
Our vote was for decidedly
Our
Nancy.
our our official ballot was Wilfred
Hmm.
Nancy, Coach of the Year.
Yep.
And I
Yeah,
think, and they are an excellent team. Like, let's mince no words about it. I just think New York Red Bulls are also very good. And
Hmm.
like, the reality is, stylistically, one of the things that I'm so happy we flagged up is that the Red Bulls played Columbus two different ways throughout the regular season. One was an ultra Red Bull diamond press, and one was a back five suffer ball three to transition up the middle. And that was exactly how they
that's
played,
exactly how they played. Yeah.
and it
Hmm.
went really well.
That
The,
Reyes had a surprisingly really strong game.
I thought he had a good series. And you know what? You know what I think, Ben, and I'm curious what you think about this because like you got to watch a lot of really good attacking soccer up close this playoffs. Is I I actually thought Columbus did a really good job attacking a very good defensive team.
I think so. When I think the New York Red Bulls had to put so much focus. Like you look at I think it was the game two. Like they had to put up like 1.3 defensive G plus against that Columbus offensive attack. Like the Columbus offense was firing way more in game two on the road than in the beginning. And I think like that, like you're saying, there's those two different styles. I think that game one was more suffer ball. Like they got their goal early, and then at that point it was just defend, 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 snuff everything out, let Columbus kick it around and they're not able to penetrate anything. Then they make it a track read back in Red Bull Arena, and they're able to like control. Like it was pretty inconsistent from the Red Bulls, but they got it together to start the second half for like a good 20-minute stretch. That's about when they get their goals, and then suddenly Columbus has to come out and play. And that, that they did eventually get their goal, but the fact that Columbus wasn't able to get that early lead that they really want. Like they got their one goal, but let the control back up. And it was a little game statey that first game, but then the fact that Red Bulls were able to keep that defense at bay, I feel like speaks well for them going forward. I think I'm higher on them than I expected to be if they were going to get out of this. Actually seeing them play. Because I would have assumed that Columbus totally fell on their face, and I don't think they did. I thought both teams really were playing well on this.
I
I,
just
I
love that Lewis Morgan is the one that comes away with the win. He was so good in that,
oh,
and there's so
lights
much
out.
talk about XG, where's his XG? Just can't finish. Who cares? The dude was
Him
all over the place, creating space, diving into space, and creating opportunities. And you know what? Okay, he didn't score any of them, but they all ultimately led to more opportunities.
I think the real key for the Red Bulls in this series that was like huge for them, and I think will be huge in the next round, I believe against the winner of Miami Atlanta, because I'm pretty sure that was the 4-5 series, right?
Mhm.
I think the thing that was huge for them was that all three of Lewis Morgan, Dante Van Zier, and Philip and Forsberg were unbelievable defensively. The amount of work, like I remember at the end of game two when Lewis Morgan came off, or no, the end of game one when Lewis Morgan came off for Elias Manuel, he literally you could see him walking off the field like dead. Like he was just like, I can't move anymore. But I think that was like a huge, huge, huge thing for the Red Bulls. It was that Columbus, as fine as they were, like I thought they did a very good job to attack the back five. I thought they did a good job of loading up the back post. That's how they get the goal from Max Darfston in the second game. I think as much as all of that is true, the Red Bull really denied their ability to like get into the rhythm to really, really break them down. Like the thing that really stands out to me is throughout the whole series, how often did you feel like, oh, like the goal is coming from Columbus? And the only time I felt that way the whole series was the last 20 minutes of the first half in game two and the first 10 minutes of the second half until the Arfsting goal. That half an hour stretch was the only time the whole series where I was like, oh, it's over. Like Columbus are here. Like this is what we're getting at. And like credit to them. I think they were really really good. Dylan Nealis right now is the ninth best player in the whole league by G plus above average, and it is all interrupting value. It is just huge interrupting value from him. Harrison, who stood out to you other than Lewis Morgan? Like, because there's one name I kind of I don't want to bring it up, and I'm hoping one of you guys say it, but there's like one name on my list that I was like, wow, you are different.
It can't be anyone from the Columbus that you're thinking of.
No, no, it's a
Um,
Red Bull guy. It's a
yeah.
Red Bull guy.
I will say like I kind of echo your thoughts because the crew at no point in time like Arvston scores and it more was like thank God. It like that's how it felt. It was like a sigh of relief. It was like thank you Jesus. It was that oh my God hallelujah type moment of we're not dead in the water. Because up to that moment they were they were dead in the water. And it felt that way. It felt like New York just absolutely had their number. I don't know necessarily if you're talking about like John Tolkien or Edelman. I thought both
That's the name.
oh, which one?
Edelman to me.
Edelman was really good. I like Tolkien as well. I thought
I
both of them were really good.
I think based on the tactical asks of like the way high level soccer is played today, defensive midfielder is the hardest position in the entire world to play, and by far the hardest position in the entire world for young players to play. Um, Actually, somebody who doesn't work for a USL team anymore, but used to work for a USL team, told me they tried to get Edelman 4 years ago from Red Bull, and the Red Bull just laughed. They were like, "Yeah, no, no, he's good. We're not moving him." And a Red Bull fan, actually, JJ Post, who like writes some of our NWSL previews, really good follow for like women's college soccer, super locked in, and is a Red Bull fan. He said to me, we were talking about Edelman, and I was like, dude, like I can't believe what I saw from that guy. The block he made in the second game, the slide
Yes.
tackle from behind. JJ thought he's like, I think that's the best tackle I've ever seen for Red Bull. And I was like, I was thinking about it and I'm like, I'm not a Red Bull fan. I don't watch every game every week, but I was thinking about it and I'm like, given the context and like the degree of difficulty, crazy defensive performance from him through 2 games. And like
Well,
the Columbus blender is so hard to deal with.
and Ben, I'm kind of curious as to if you have any thoughts on this, and I'll let you go. But Edelman himself had like 63 touches in the game. Like he had some of the like touches in of itself are meaningless, right? And it doesn't necessarily constitute importance per se, but the fact that he just was all over that pitch, kind of doubling down on like what you were talking about with Lewis Morgan, just being exhausted. Edelman himself played a little bit more than what Lewis Morgan did in the 2 games combined. And he was all over that middle of that field, challenging Columbus. Really good player. Really exciting to see where he could be next year or even in a couple years, right?
Ben, I'm
Well,
actually going to cut you off there because we're going to jump into another series because we don't want to go too long today. We're going to go right to your expertise. So I'm sorry to do this to you, but I need give us the postmortem on what was ultimately a very successful for the Rapids, a very successful season for the Rapids. Chris Armas was a finalist for Coach of the Year. You got a lot of new bodies in the door who played pretty well. You lost to a better team.
yep.
Where's your head at?
So, I mean, if all of our listeners who heard the our last episode, I pretty much knew this was coming. I was not looking forward to this. The first game was an unmitigated disaster, generated absolutely nothing offensively. The XG difference was like 3 to point oh 0.03, according to our
Opta,
numbers.
or FB ref with rounds
No.
to tenths has it as zero,
Oh my
and it
God.
is one
Yeah.
shot. It is one
Yeah.
shot.
No, like it was just a disaster. And here's the thing though, and I think this is a little controversial. Armas changed his formation pretty radically. Like like I think there was one game where he shifted to a back three and we coughed up 2 goals to lose it. And so this game he started, it goes a 3-4-2-1. I thought it was a great move because our wingers have been ever since Cabral went down and I think Cabral was they started Cabral in one of the two underneath Navajo with Mihailovic, which I thought was an interesting look. Um, we had not been getting width. like reliable width, in sizing since like the middle of the summer. It feels like basically since like we did a defensive style, for some games in League's Cup. Like the danger just hasn't been there for the back end of the season, and getting three center backs and then pushing the wing backs up felt felt like there was some life again, or at least it felt like there was control in the game. It wasn't a very exciting game, but it wasn't out of control. And let's face it, all three of those first three goals, the two Galaxy ones, Stefan makes a ridiculous error, and then both Larraz and Paintsel have moments of individual brilliance to put the ball in the net. So that's pretty much an even game up until like the whenever the rails came off, like after I left the stadium in the 84th minute, timed that one well. Um, it wasn't as bad as it feels. It really wasn't. And it puts my mind towards next year, evaluating that performance, who's going to be around, who's worth options, who's worth negotiating. My take is not me. It's going to be another really active off season if things go the way I want them to. So that's where I'm at. And the Galaxy are freaking amazing. Like that offense can just burn you at the drop of a hat. They have the talent. They subbed in Marco Royce, who is not as good as the other people on this team. Like that's how good this Galaxy team is.
Let's stay there, Harrison. And it's weird. We're going to talk about the Rapids more than we're going to talk about the Galaxy, but I have a feeling we're going to be doing more episodes about the Galaxy this year
Yeah, I think that's fair.
because that team is very, very good. But I want to talk about the Rapids, and I want to talk about this Chris Armas 343 because we had a good conversation about this where we disagreed, and like I think sometimes when we're like very statty, we can be a little bit samey, but I think this was like one where we really disagree. And Ben, you brought up the point about like actually this might be a really interesting option for next year, and I said this is like the thing that Armas does, where like he comes up against the talent wall where like my team is worse than your team and there's not that much I can do about it. I'm going to flap tactically and just try stuff. And maybe it's a little bit better one game and now I think this is a better way to play even if it's not actually a better way to play. And the reason I say this is because when Chris Armas was at Toronto FC, now Columbus are not or Colorado are not Toronto FC. Chris Armas had a quite good start to the season with terrible results. Okay? Like the team, I think, in their first 8 games, lost 6 of them, or lost 5 of them, drew 2-1-1. But on the expected goal difference, they had a positive expected goal difference. Like they were like +4. And it's like, okay, well, hold on. What's going on here? They then deservingly lose to Nashville, deservingly lose to Cincinnati. And what happens? He breaks out a 3-5-2 and a 3-4-3. They immediately get drilled 7-1 by DC United, and Chris Armas is fired the next day. I think this is a thing he does a little bit that he just like kind of flaps. But we have seen repeatedly in MLS having another arrow in the quiver is really, really valuable. So I would be very hesitant, like to say, oh, maybe this is how we choose to play next year. Because I think that's a bad idea. Especially like then you have to recruit a lot of center backs and you don't have center. And the good center backs you do have are not back three center backs.
No, well, we need to be signing center backs. That's
Well,
another
that's you.
thing
You
I've got.
definitely need center backs no matter what. But like, you're not going to put like Maxo in a three unless he's the middle one, and like maybe Rosenberry could play like the outside center back or something like that. Like that maybe interests me.
And that's kind of what I was going to say. They need to recruit center backs regardless. And I think maybe finding someone that's flexible that can fit, knowing that is a quiver and an arrow in your quiver going forward, it does help you know, hey, this is a flexibility that we want. And maybe it's not something that we realized beforehand, but like Ben said, this is a team that needs to grow and they need depth. And so maybe that's not a bad thing to kind of look at and try to orchestrate your recruitment policy around saying, hey, we need somebody who's maybe flexible in this at this position.
Well, purely from a squad building perspective, like we've talked pretty extensively about the value of players who can play two positions. And I
Mhm.
think from a squad building perspective, like being able to play a three is a good card to have in your back pocket all the time, all the
Especially in
time,
MLS.
especially in MLS. Like it's a very useful tool. I mean, think back to the unbelievable 2017 Toronto FC team, the best MLS team of all time. That team flipped between a diamond and a 3-5-2 the whole year. And the only difference is whether it's Bradley as a six or Drew Moore as a middle center back. And like, really, it's the same between the two. And the whole year, nobody knew what they were going to play. And in the playoffs, they played both. And then in the final, it's like, are they going to go three? Are they going to go diamond? And they go diamond and they rinse Seattle. So I think it's very valuable to have that tool in the back pocket. Ben, closing remarks on this series. Uh, Zach Steffen? Yee.
Oh, I need to do, well, yeah, not good. But he's
Yee.
had moments. I don't know. I need to
Trade Zach
rethink some
Steffen.
things.
Trade Zach Steffen to DC United and sign Matt Turner.
Whoa.
You never know. You never know.
I hate
Alrighty. Another series while we giggle away to ourselves. Another series that certainly happened was Seattle Houston. Harrison,
it. Certainly happened. Oh my God.
this
That's
How does
such
it
a good
feel? You
transition from Houston.
champions moving on confidently to the next round, Seattle Sounders.
you know what? I had fun watching this series. Other people did not.
Dude,
I
I have other
it's
people.
crazy that the takes and the diverse takes in Seattle fans. Like there's Seattle fans that are super excited that they want that they're moving on. I'm not even gonna say one
Yeah,
that they're moving
you
on.
you as MLS Ref Stats is very eager to point out, technically you did not win. You advanced on
And
penalties.
I will totally use that. I will totally use their terminology. Yes, they advanced on penalties. I agree with that. But there's some Seattle fans that are very excited about that. And then you have Seattle fans that are very much not because they did not perform well. And in some ways, okay, they went to Houston. And I know last week I was very excited about the idea of Seattle going to Houston in the construct of they would be able to play a little bit more open. They'd be able to be a little bit more attacking. And I thought that was going to serve them well. And instead, Houston just absolutely ate and they feasted there early. And if it wasn't for a Hector Herrera, oopsie daisies, like we're talking probably about a game three in Seattle. I mean, realistically.
So listen, there's three things I want to talk about in this series. The first is that Seattle played up a player for like 40 total minutes in the series and created nothing. Nothing. Across the two games, they created like 1.5 expected goals.
That's not entirely true. They created after Ache left. They created 10 shots.
Yep, but that whole game they put up point 0.9 expected goals.
Against like almost two expected goals for Houston, who I guess did
Agreed.
it all
Agreed.
before the red card.
I just want to point out that they did create shots. They did create opportunities. They just
Fine,
weren't high leverage. And part of that was because of the fact that Houston absolutely said, break us down.
for sure.
And Seattle
And
has none of that utility.
and the second point that I want to talk about, well, one point and then the second point I want to talk about, Jordan Morris only played a half of the series. He goes off injured in the first game, doesn't play as a precaution in the second game. Alba Rusnak, who has been maybe Seattle's best player all season, doesn't play in the second game. So, like, there are legitimate things to put aside, right? The second point is that they had to play Pedro de la Vega in both games. And that guy is just straight up worse than Georgie Monangu, who literally has one eye.
Wait. You use Georgie in a very negative connotation.
No, Georgie's sick. He's way better than the guy that you paid $7 million for.
Agreed.
He has one eyeball. Did you know
One,
this?
yeah.
I did not know this.
He,
For people, Boomstick 315 in the ASA patron Discord, which has been so fun during playoff games, informed me that Georgie Monangu has one eye because of an accident as a child or something. He plays on the left for Tacoma Defiance, so his one good eye is looking at the field. And he's playing on the right for Seattle, so he can't even see the field with his eye. And he is better than Pedro de la Vega, who across the two games did actually nothing. And he's healthy now. He's fit. And I look at this team going forward and I'm like, wow, Jordan Morris is so good. Rusak is good. Roldan and Obed and João Paulo. These guys are sick. They have real talent in this team. Jackson Reagan, so good. I think this team has real talent, and that guy is a black hole every
I
possession.
don't. I counter that though. Okay. João Paulo has moments. He has moments. He floats in and out of them. Rui Diaz probably passes prime. Jordan Morris, not a striker at playing out of position.
That's fine. That's fine. But
Rusniak cannot break down in close quarters. Great transition midfielder, not a not a difference maker unless it's on set pieces. And so at this certain point in time, you have teams that are like, "Hey, break us down," and they
Pedro
can't.
Pedro de la Vega has taken 6 shots in his last 3 games for a combined quarter of an expected goal. Like the guy just doesn't do anything of value. And like and okay, he's 22 and blah, 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 new country and all those sorts of things. Fine. Rusnak put up 10.
But you what you're
So
saying,
hold
Rus,
up.
but a lot
Rus,
of what you're saying isn't rooted in what he's done in MLS. A lot of it's rooted in what he's done across
no,
a
but
series of
he
time,
wasn't
he
he wasn't good in Argentina either.
and
Like it
that's
So
wasn't
kind
a
of what
here's
volume there either.
well
that's what I
here's
just want to substantiate. I want you to be able
No, but
to
well hold on guys.
he has 1 goal and 1 assist in 800
Here's
minutes in MLS.
here's what G Plus has to say.
Tell me G
George
plus hates him. I haven't looked.
Georgie on so I'm looking at Seattle uh above average by position per 96. Georgie's number 2 on the team. Jordan Morris is
Baller.
first at 0.11. Georgie's at 0.08. Pedro de la Vega is at negative point 0.1.
Nice.
He's
So by the
bad.
way, to give you a reference for that, compared to average, that means he's basically replacement level because the difference between average and replacement level is about 0.15. So that means he is at the same level as like the generic Tacoma Defiance kid you call up, which is not good for a DP. And I just felt like bullying Pedro de la Vega because I think he sucks. And sometimes I see people and they're like, he's sick. We're so much better when he plays. Harrison, I know you said that. I don't
I've
see it.
never, number one, I've
You
never,
said, I'm putting you on blast. You said this team is better when he plays. That was an explicit message in the chat.
oh, I'd like to see that. I think they have the potential to play better because,
Oh,
and
for sure.
I think they have the potential to play better. I think that might
I
be
just
more of
I just
the
think
context. But and here's the reason why I say this, right? And this goes back to Seattle is a transition team right now. That's the majority of their players. They want to play in
but this
transition,
is the
and no one in
playoffs.
MLS, yeah, absolutely, and no one's going to let them do that, and they haven't done it all season. Most teams have not allowed Seattle to get on in that transition. And so with De La Vega, I believe he had one of his few skills that he might maintain is that he can pick out a pass
Can
and
he?
help. You can see that you can see the effort is there. You can see the
No,
amount
he objectively tries very hard. Like that I have no qualms with that. I
And,
just
but
think
it's not
I
objectively, it's that he's getting to the baseline and he's trying to do those cutbacks. And just Houston's been really good about cutting him off. I think that he needs time. I don't think he's ultimately the answer for Seattle. I don't think he ultimately unfolds the Seattle team. But we've talked way too long. You had a third point. Let's get to that.
I don't even know what it is anymore.
I feel like it's Hector Herrera.
Oh, it was. You're right. It was Ache Ache. Oh my God, we're gonna go so long in this series. Ache Ache. Ben, you made an amazing point about I would not pick up Ache Ache's option here. After obviously a deplorable act. We're not even gonna talk about spitting on a referee, whatever. Ache Ache this year was decidedly less good than last year. He played way fewer minutes. Houston were not as good as a team. And this was a very interesting roster building conversation where we had all very different points. So, Ben, lay out your thinking with a 34-year-old, soon to be 35-year-old Ache Ache on decline. Would you take his option? Would you extend him? Would you just move on? What would you do?
Are they
playing
just
what Kieran said is the most difficult position in modern soccer.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah.
I hear all of that and I'm moving on. And I will so Harrison has in the chat made some very good points looking at his net G plus. He's exceptional net G plus, one of the best to ever like put central or defensive midfield season together. And both this year and last year, 2022 obviously did not go so well. But for the past 2 years, exceptional central midfielder. I look at the rest of the G plus on this team, and boy, it's not looking great. It's really not looking great. Like Ache was running this team this year, and his defensive contributions took a big hit. If you look at net G plus, which a little movement on net G plus is a lot of movement because it's very clustered around zero. So he's on the way down. Understandably, he cannot carry this team anymore, and this team needs to be rebuilt. And you cannot sink another almost $5 million into one player that isn't going to be here for one more beyond the season, unless you're going to sign him now, and that would be an even worse decision in my view.
S-
So I think you just have to blow it up and start over, and I think you have to reallocate those resources into new players and other parts of the roster.
I think a weird thing about Houston is like aside from Ache, they actually aren't super rebuildy. Like they're not he's old, but like the rest of their team is like peak or like early peak. Um like Karaskia and
Hmm.
Bashi and Aliyu and Griffin Dorsey and like Steve Clark is on the older
Steris.
side.
Yeah, they're like,
Steve Clark is on the other side. The defenders are a little bit older, but like they're at a fine age window. We're not even Daniel Steres, by the way, cold penalty taker.
yeah. Oh my God,
Cold.
he's a penalty
Sorry.
specialist, and I freaking
By the
love
way,
it.
the penalties in that series were
Yeah,
so good. And
Yeah, they were.
the
yeah,
penalties in every other series have been pants.
yeah.
Uh regardless, the my opinion was that you should take the option because I think it affords you more flexibility. You give up short-term flexibility for sure. Like Ache is not a $5 million player next year. However, it's November, and I would bet the Dynamo were not anticipating needing to replace him at the end of this year or wanting to. Maybe looking at it being like, we could, but I don't. I would bet if they looked at the end of last year that they were like, we'll probably pick up the option next year. However, now you're in a point where like you probably want out of that deal longer term. And I think by picking up the option now, it gives you the flexibility for it to go for a year and to go work with Source Football, the analytics consultancy from that they've been working with from Ravi and Co. And Sarah Rudd and saying like, okay, we want a DP center midfielder who can run the show for us and defend. Our budget is a $5 million salary. Go find somebody. And at the end of that option year, you can say to Ache if you want to keep him around, which you probably do, dude, you're not a DP anymore. Like, we'll bring you back for Tam. And you can do like the Bedoya thing where he gradually scales off a DP deal and down and down and down over the years. And like as production stays, you kind of decide what to do. Because it's like, I don't think he's going to ever be not good at where he is now. But I think taking the option year allows you the flexibility to line that up. Where if you decline the option, you now have the choice to let him walk away entirely, and now you're scrambling to replace him fully, or trying to negotiate a new deal. And I think right now, if you tried to negotiate a new deal with him, he would want a DP deal. And then you're just locking yourself into the same problem because whether you spend $5 million or $2 million on a DP salary doesn't really matter. That's where I'm at. Harrison, what do you think?
I actually have some suggestion maybe between the two of you. Is there a world in which they pick up the option and then transfer him to Mexico mid-season?
I'd be surprised. You could, but like given the Mexican calendar, I don't know why they wouldn't just wait, or if he had the interest now, why he wouldn't just leave.
Well, let's run this through, right? So from the Dynamo perspective, it makes sense because you want to give time to kind of build out that list. Like you said, I don't think that they have, I could be wrong. I don't know inside what the Dynamo are looking at and whether or not they have a list of possible Herrera replacements. But you let him go mid-season. For Hector Herrera, he has an opportunity to go play for a team that maybe during, let's say in August, when they have the Champions Cup come and do all that crap in August, he goes and gets to play for a team that he really maybe wants to play and play. Maybe that's just 2 games, but it gives him a chance to kind of have a farewell tour, so to speak, between MLS and Liga MX. I kind of wonder if that isn't a nice type gesture and a nice type of moment where both teams can kind of, or both parties can kind of mutually leave. And at that point in time, you know he's going to get paid by Mexico teams. You know he's going to get paid, and it's probably going to be close to what Houston's paying him right now. So, I mean, I feel like it's kind of a best of both worlds for both parties.
I think there's lots of options, but I think we're all in agreement. The last thing you want to do is lock him up long term for big money, and then you're paying a
Agreed.
third. This is like
Yep.
we have seen over and over again. The death knell in MLS is you get stuck with an expensive DP who can't play anymore or
Mhm.
Mhm.
misses lots of time. It's very, very difficult. But Houston have been pretty sharp since North Football came in, and in the last 2 years, and they've got some good people working behind the scenes. I'm sure they'll come to something quite clever. Alrighty, next up in our series to talk about is another series in the West, one that we nailed. The Fighting Minnesota Loons won in what I can only describe as the coolest shootout victory in MLS history. Listen,
You got your Canadian bias, and
yes,
that's
yes,
all that's.
objectively, it is so cool. Vince Carter
I didn't
gets
see a
his
double
jersey.
post.
Yeah.
Fair, I guess, fair. Vince Carter gets his jersey retired, and on the same night, Dane St. Clair goes nuts, saves 3 PKs in a row, and on the third one, does the Vince Carter dunk contest. It's over. Just like a coldest moment. Super cool for Minnesota. Very happy for them. They've had like a really good crowd as well. RSL are frauds, which we said, don't sell your best player in the middle of the season, you cowards.
It's
And
okay when the Rapids do it though. That's fine.
no,
Here's two
he
things.
probably, yeah.
Two things. Minnesota wasn't clean. Like Minnesota didn't win this cleanly.
Oh no,
Like
this was a scrap fest.
this
No,
was
God, no.
RSL, and let's just say what it is. Yeah, they weren't able to like create anything on the attack, and absolutely they're you guys were right. I was wrong. I You guys were right. I was wrong. I
No,
thought
you
You
picked
got
RSL
you
would
got the
be.
Red Bulls on that
no,
one
you picked
still.
RSL to be contrarian. You believed in
I
them.
did a little bit, but also because that's what I really hoped. I really hoped that RSL didn't put all their eggs in one basket, and that by selling off, it gave them an opportunity to go, forward. Anyways, regardless, it was the wrong move. They should have kept their best attacking player because they couldn't create anything. And ultimately, Justin Glad had a terrible two-leg series. Terrible.
Yeah,
And
this is kind of the thing is like as much as we talk about whatever like they advanced, like both of these teams are not very good. Like Minnesota are definitely losing in the next round.
Yeah, they have no shot against Galaxy.
I don't think so. I really don't think so. I actually like I don't really have much else to say about this series. I think we can kind of move on if
I
unless you
mean, I
guys have
think
any last closing thoughts.
the only thing I got is Minnesota has Huang Buane, they have Pereira, and they have Yeboah, and those
Yeah,
three
fun.
can
And
make things
wow,
happen.
those
and
three
te
are so
They
exciting,
popped.
Ben.
They popped. Those are the only three players that did much of anything underlying
Ta
numbers wise this
and
series. So
Tanny off the bench is nice and like
yeah.
they're
So
I think it's
they
in
have something to watch. Like they might make it interesting, but I
if
don't
they
think they
were
can last.
if
I
they
don't
were
think they can
not
score
playing the
five.
Galaxy,
Yeah,
if
I
they
don't
were
think they
not
can
playing the
score five.
Galaxy, we'd be like, all right, maybe, let's see.
I do want to reiterate, and I said this last time, right? This is not a team for this year. This team has a
No,
lot of
no.
No,
pieces, and
exactly.
and they're gonna cook. They really
Spe
are.
Speaking of,
But
to play,
they just need to fit. They just need like one or two, and just some solidifying like what is
yeah,
being the groundwork that is being made right now. They're going to be really, really stinking stupid, annoyingly good next year.
No, if they upgrade on Will Trapp, like get a much better defensive midfielder than Will
God,
Trapp.
his PK was so terrible.
Oh, rubbish. But also like he's just like old and like can't really do the things he's supposed to do anymore. Like you upgrade on him and you get a good center back and like that's a real team. Uh Doyle picked them to win their series, but was like, "Hey, I don't think you're going to go that far. Like, I just don't think you're going to do a lot of damage in the playoffs." And they laminated it. He picked you to win the series, which I didn't understand. Moving on from that series, uh, I think that's all the done ones, right? Is
Yeah,
that all the done ones?
that's all the done ones.
Alrighty, we can move to the game threes because I'm very organized. I'm just going to go in the order that they are scheduled to occur. FC Cincinnati, New York City. This series has been really fun. The wingbacks have really mattered, like we said. And New York were killed in the first game. I think Paul Harvey flagged it as the biggest expect or the second biggest expected goal difference loss in like the history of the franchise or fifth, like top five for sure. And they were terrible the first game. They got panned. They were very good at Citi Field in the second game. They win 3-1. It's a 3-1 game on XG. Yes, there's a late penalty that makes that a little bit less a little bit more clear than perhaps it was before that, but like going into the third game, I'd probably call it like half a goal favorites for FC Cincinnati, something like that. But this has been a really good series.
Yeah, no, I kind of feel that trying to give Ben an opportunity.
No.
Santi Rodriguez was so freaking amazing, like so good. Like he just had some moments where he absolutely bullied and took over this game, and man, New York looked so good. Like I didn't expect them to be as good as what they had in moments. It absolutely blew me away, and vice versa. We saw the FC Cincinnati that I was ranting about, right? Like we all saw that. Like it was flat. It wasn't good. Uh Orciano was like their best player
Mhm.
and like was the only one worth watching.
Yeah, that tracks in the individual G plus. Like he was one of the top of all of the people so far in the playoffs. But not many from that game were up with him.
Let's
I think he was third
let's
overall for 96.
let's focus on game three. Ben, what's your like thing that you're going to be looking for? We're 30 minutes in, there's no goals yet. What's the thing you're looking for that's going to decide the tie?
I'm looking for if New York City's actually doing anything or if they're just trying to write it out for penalties. Again. Because I mean, I think like you look at the series, and I think the home advantage has been the big sway. I think at jumping
That's
out to
fair.
the early league when New York was at home was a big deal. I think they were able to get that, try and hold on to that game state. So I like you look at the game flow, it swung more towards Cincinnati than anything New York had at in game one on the road. So they have to be able to do something. And if they're not doing anything, I think it's just a matter of time until Cincy get it. And maybe if they can hang on for penalties, but I I think Cincinnati has the edge.
Harrison, what's your key to the game?
Cincinnati's like Orciano can be the guy that carries this team. It's going to have to be this whole full team. One of the things that really stood out in game one was how good Kubo was early. Like Kubo was all over the place, and he tends to kind of be that way. But like Acosta and like everyone pitched in. Like their goals that they scored, like the goal that they scored, it was a team goal. Everything that happened with that team. It felt like all of them came together, and vice versa in NYC. It just felt like they kind of fell apart. They just kind of were all doing separate individual things that it just didn't mesh. So I feel like it's going to have to be that the team itself kind of comes together. They have a team moment.
I think I think the thing that stands out for me is like how easily do New York build up? How easily do they get into their in possession game versus like getting turned over earlier? And then how quickly do Cincinnati transition the other way? I think that's going to be a really, really key turning point in that one. No other games on that Friday, certainly looking at the schedule, there's definitely no other teams playing. Uh on the actually that's the Saturday. The Friday night, for some reason kicking off at 8 p.m. Pacific time because nobody on the East Coast wants to watch this game. Vancouver LAFC. This series has been pretty bonkers. Um, the first game, you would be reasonable to think that LAFC smashed them. It was a 2-1 win with a late Vancouver game, but a very close XG game. The second game, Vancouver wins 3-0. Also a very close XG game. There's an own goal in there. Vancouver, we thought would not give LAFC that great a series. We very much focused on Portland. Scary, scary hours for LAFC, who now have to win at home against a very decent Vancouver team. Ben, where are you at with this series?
think it's a mixture of both because I think Vancouver had been doing so terribly in the regular season up until this, but I think they flipped. The question was their destroying of Portland real or fake? Now I think we can say for certain it was real. Like this is a real bounce back in how the team's playing. I think LAFC are falling off too. Like there is something about the rhythm or maybe the expectations. Like they made these signings. Like they signed Carlos Vela. Has he played yet? So Carlos Vela's just in the locker room right now. Like something's up with this team. They're not as dominant as they were. And I wonder if something is up. They have a lot of big names that might not be playing as well as you'd hope or getting the time that you'd like. So that's my very non-statistical curiosity about this.
Excuse me.
Harrison, where are you at? Because like we've talked about them being LAFC being too conservative with their talent, where like they really want to be a counter team and they should really try to play more. And now you go into this final game where like I think Vancouver are quite happy to be a transition team and you have to play. If you let this go to a shootout, like that's a big, big, big risk. What's your feeling for this
Well,
setup?
yeah, I mean, I think that you have to go back to like how they've approached playing Columbus in a lot of ways, right? In a lot of ways, they said, okay, Columbus, you want to go ahead and you want to be transition. We're going to go ahead and we're going to take it to you and we're going to be better. And I think that's how they're going to beat, that's the only way they beat Vancouver because of, I think if they just try to like finesse it and try to like kind of casually be like, oh, we're gonna let you have possession. Oh, they play that sort of way. I don't think it works out for them. I feel like they constantly wait for these moments to where there's open space and then they try to pounce and those moments are so fleeting and they're so few and when all you're doing is putting your ducks all your eggs in the basket for those few opportunities like it's great. Those opportunities are always higher XG than what we expect. That's when we talk about where expected or where goals come from, right? That those transition goals are huge and they always are more valuable than XG kind of implies, but they're so few. And when you're putting your eggs in the basket as the better team, as the more expensive team with these lavish players and these very fitted skills for the team and the tactics, you have to take it to them. You have to, instead of being afraid of how you got beat, you have to just kind of you have to assert your dominance at a certain point in time, and that's no disparaging to Vancouver. Like I really want to call out Sebastian Berhalter. Like as we're talking about like players that did unexpectedly really well, like Berhalter has shined. And he has on multiple occasions throughout this year. His G plus is really, really rocking. I'm I'm interested to see what he transitions to as a player.
I'm very curious if like Chicago try and trade for him. I'd be very curious to see about that. I think the big thing we've seen is like do like so we've talked about how like in knockout style play, playing conservative is like kind of the meta. Like it is you improve your two advanced probabilities by reducing XGA than more so than like trying to win. But in best of three, that's objectively not true. You are trying to win. You're trying to win right then. And I think LAFC might get bit. by that, by playing too negatively. Moving
I
on.
do you question, is it hurt you playing conservatively when you're in that type of game state, when you have to win, such as what they're in?
Definitely. Because
Yeah.
Vancouver, if it goes to a shootout, Vancouver would be so happy with that.
Mhm.
Like,
Psychologically, Vancouver get the benefit out of that, and I think just the fact that them scoring first at home sort of showed the weakness of it because now they can sit back, and you can't if you're a team that likes to sit back, and now you have to be on the front foot against a team that likes to sit back. Now you're out of your element,
But
and
let
I
me,
think
and I don't
okay,
disagree with you guys. I'm just trying to be contrarian here. Do you really
and
think it's a 50-50 chance that Vancouver wins in a shootout? Do you think it's
sure,
straight 50-50?
yes, I
sure.
do.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Like I'd say
But I think
it's
you're happy with that being on the road because suddenly that's a lot better than you're at your odds when the first whistle first blew.
yeah,
Okay.
like this is the thing. Like for Vancouver, if you say these teams are even in MLS, home field advantage is about half a goal, right? Something like
Yeah.
that, point 0.4 goals. So like at that point, and like we think Vancouver are probably a little bit worse than LAFC, like yeah, you would for sure if they offered you a shootout right now, you take it 100%. So like I think they will be very happy to let LAFC play conservative. I think LAFC are going to open it up and they're going to go for it. That's my prediction. Moving on, the last series, and another really interesting one, and another one that has been absolute box office is Miami Atlanta. Like face melting errors for goals, screamers to win games. It's been very fun. We have a first game where Miami kind of pumped Atlanta. It was not a competitive match. I think on the XG it was like 4-1, yeah, 3.3 to 1. But then the second time they play, dead even on XG and Atlanta pip it. I think this will not be a super competitive game three. But Lionel Messi playing 3 games back to back to back. Yes, there's a week in between them all. Let's see. Let's see. Ben, where are you at? Who you got in the last game?
So I'm leaning towards Miami, but I think they're more vulnerable than the numbers make it look. And they did absolutely destroy Atlanta in game one. I then looked at the G plus individually for that team compared to Atlanta for the series or for their playoff run so far. So Atlanta has the extra game against Montreal. Miami only have like three starters that are appreciably contributing positively to G plus. Of course, Lionel Messi has created 1.5 goals in 2 games, which is just the most outrageous thing I've ever seen in my life. Um, and then you've got Busquets doing good work. You've got Jordi Alba doing good work. You've got David Martinez putting in some key defensive stops. And then no one else is really doing much offensive. Like Suarez has been a big negative these past couple games. Like the team is not quite firing the way you'd want it to be. And at this point, it seems like Messi has been doing so much of the load himself. So it's possible that's going to continue for a third game that can win them, but I think that makes them vulnerable. So I really want to see Tata switch this up, like get Julian Gressel in the starting lineup, get some actual control on the ball for like control the game, like get
Right.
the ball on your foot, make sure Atlanta's running the whole time because their players have been contributing pretty consistently. So when they have the ball, they can do stuff with it. So I think the goal should be change the phase of play, control the game more. Don't rely on Messi so much. Hopefully he can break the game open in those few moments you need him, but just keep the ball away from Atlanta, and that should be enough to win.
Yeah, Gressel like not playing doesn't make sense to me at all. I'm very confused. I'm very
Especially when you
confused by that.
chose him over Yedlin.
Well, I mean, I guess like does Yedlin add anything for them in this series really, or in any of the series? I don't know. Like, and I get it. I get it. It is a fair question, I suppose. But it is odd to me that he has not. really used Gressel so
I
far.
feel
He's
like
been
he's been such a big reason that they've won games without Messi in the lineup was because he was that anchor all over the field.
and he can do so many things for you, and like I think he's a very useful player. I would bet we see him more as things go on with Inter Miami. Ben Pickett, give me a score. Give me a prediction.
Miami 3-1.
Harrison, what's your prediction?
I was gonna lean 3-1, but I'll go 4-1. Miami.
I, I'm gonna go Miami 5-0. I think they get up too early and then just as Atlanta open up, they blow the doors off. I'm going to get real aggressive with it. Anyways, that's our pod. We got all the games coming on the weekend. We got Kieran's going to go back to Canada and not be allowed back in the country. We got a lot going on, my friends. We got a lot going on. Anyways, if you're enjoying the show, if you're enjoying the pod, we dropped the NWSL best 11s this week, which I think were really good. And the NWSL playoffs are starting, which is going to be super fun. Let's see how things go, my friends. But if you want to support, check out the Patreon. You can go in the Discord. It's a ton of fun, super super fun, and it's a great way to support the show. Anyways, that's all from us. As always, enjoy the soccer.